Hey everyone, this is David Brown with the migration update for April 10th, 2023 from the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. I started out the day at sunrise at the Braddock Bay East Spit. It was a very calm morning, both with the wind and with the water. Here's a male mallard that posed nicely for us. Here's the top side of a white-winged scoter. We had a small number of Caspian terns, and over the next few weeks their numbers will continue to increase up to 100 or more. And here's a distant look at an Iceland gull. I got over to the Hawk platform around 9 a.m. and you can see it was a beautiful morning with blue skies, not a cloud in the sky to start out with. Winds were light from the southwest and were supposed to shift westerly if you looked at the weather forecast, but what ended up happening was around 9:45 a northeast lake breeze kicked in, and that continued pretty much all of the day. There was one period in the afternoon when the winds shifted more easterly, and actually the flight came closer to the Hawk Watch platform, but most of the day that northeasterly lake breeze was pushing the migrants more towards the parkway and away from the lake. Here's a male wood duck flying past the platform. This ring-billed gull gave us a nice close look. Here's a couple turkey vultures, and it took a while for the turkey vultures to get going. It was really after 10 a.m. before they started coming up. And the first couple groups came fairly close to the platform or slightly off to our left, and that's typical these days when the lake breeze kicks in. For the first little while, birds are still fairly close to the platform before getting pushed farther in. These three sandhill cranes came by headed east, and a few minutes later they came back headed west and gave us a nice close look. We had three purple martins throughout the day, and the males, like this one, are just completely purple underneath, and they're our largest swallow species. In the mid-afternoon, we started to see some pretty large groups of turkey vultures, and they were heading across in front of us towards the west spit. But when they got over to the west spit, they decided just to land in the trees and hang out there for a while. Here's an adult Cooper's hawk. Notice the orange barring that shows us it's an adult. And the tail of Cooper's hawks, the outer tail feathers are shorter than the central ones. We can see those different feather lengths here in the tail. And it was closely followed by a juvenile Cooper's hawk. So we can see kind of that same shape, like a flying cross, fairly large head with straight wings, long tail that's rounded because the outer tail feathers are shorter. This one looks like it has some damage to the tip of the tail. That's why the feathers look a little bit ragged. And this is a very typical underside streaking for juvenile Cooper's hawks. It's kind of a somewhat light teardrop streaking. Here we have a turkey vulture going by, and we can see that red featherless head that they have. Here's another adult Cooper's hawk. Again, notice the large head, wings held out straight, long tail, and the outer tail feathers we can see are shorter, whereas the middle ones are longer, giving it a somewhat rounded tip to the tail. Here we have an adult female northern harrier, and someone wrote a comment asking how to identify harriers when you can't see the white rump patch. And this is a good example of a bird that's overhead, and so you can't see that rump patch. So what else are we looking for? Well, the overall shape, harriers are kind of lanky looking. They have long skinny wings that look somewhat pointed. That's one way. They have a fairly long tail. So in some ways they look like a falcon because they have the more pointed wingtips, and they look like an accipiter because they have the long tail. Their face looks a little bit like an owl. Their overall coloration and streaking is a little bit unique, like the pattern of the underwings, so that's one good field mark you can use. We know that this one's an adult female because of the amount of streaking on the underside here, and also the amount of marking in the patagial area. Another good way to identify northern harriers is by their flight style. They have a really distinctive way of flapping. It's kind of a really loose, floppy flap. Just once you've seen it, you'll kind of get that in your head. Very different from something like a Cooper's hawk, which might overall be kind of similar in shape. Here's a belted kingfisher that came over the platform, and we know it's a male because it does not have any brown on the underside. Here's an American kestrel, and kestrels are our smallest falcons. We can see those really pointed wingtips that falcons show. And we know it's a female kestrel because of the streaking on the breast. Males have more of a spotting. Here's an adult male northern harrier, also known as a gray ghost. And the adult males are the only ones that show this really light colored plumage that has a lot of gray in the head. The top side's kind of silvery, a lot of white underneath. So it's different than the juveniles and the females that are more brown overall. Here we have a red-tailed hawk, and it's kind of a backlit photo that's not great quality, but we can see that this bird looks like it's fairly heavily marked. We can see it looks like it has a pretty dark head, and maybe even the throat is dark. Fairly large dark patagial bars and belly band, and it's an adult, so it has the dark trailing edge to the wings and a red tail. And I would bet, because of how heavily marked this bird is, that this is from the northern subspecies, or Abieticola. Most of the red tails we see are the eastern subspecies, or borealis, but we do see some of these more heavily marked northern birds. Towards the end of the day, this osprey went by, and it came back a few minutes later with a large fish. Here we have another northern harrier, and we can see that it's holding its wings up. If we could see it more from the side, we would see its wings are up in a V, called a dihedral, kind of similar to what you see turkey vultures doing. And this bird was hunting the marsh, and that's another way to identify harriers, is by their behavior. And a lot of days throughout the entire day, from the Hawk Watch, if you just scan over the marsh, you'll see a northern harrier or two hunting out there. They cruise really low over the marsh, and that's just their flight style. Usually they're going into the wind and just going really slow and low, and you'll see them dive down occasionally. And that's different than the hunting style of other things like red-tailed hawks. You'll see hovering high above the marsh. You'll see rough-legged hawks doing that as well. This float plane made a very close pass in front of the Hawk Watch platform. In fact, this photo is not cropped at all. I just barely got it to fit in the frame of the camera as it passed by in front. And it circled around and even did a bit of a touch and go on the other side of the bay. Taking a look at the eBird checklists, from the East Spit in the morning, we had 66 species, so pretty good morning out there. And at Braddock Bay Park, I had 68 species for the day. If we look at hawk count for our migrant raptor totals, today we had 725 turkey vultures, 8 bald eagles, 14 northern harriers, 19 sharp-shinned hawks, 6 Cooper's hawks. For buteos, we had 5 red shoulders and 25 red tails. We had 1 immature golden eagle. We had 9 American kestrels for a total of 812 migrants today. And very similar to yesterday, the golden eagle was in the afternoon and it was fairly distant, kind of a scope view only, and it was towards the sun, so it was backlit. So not a very satisfying view, but nice to get a few golden eagles the past few days. That brings our April total up to 11,163 migrants. And the season total is now at 20,335 migrants. I had 1 new species for the season, which was ruby-crowned kinglet. Taking a look at the forecast for tomorrow, it's looking cloudy with gusty winds in the afternoon, high in the mid-60s. Winds west-southwest at 20 to 30 miles per hour. So those strong winds, especially in the afternoon, may make viewing uncomfortable just as we get blown around by the wind. But should be a really good day overall. Southwesterly winds overnight should get the non-raptors moving, so there could be a decent morning flight as well. Cloudy skies, you would think that might disrupt the thermals, but really when the winds are this strong from this direction, as we've seen in a couple of the recent good days, it doesn't seem to matter. The birds are pushing through even on the overcast skies. So not too concerned about it being cloudy, and that'll actually help it make it easier for us to spot the birds, although maybe not so easy to identify them because you're getting more of a silhouette. Also, those stronger winds may push the migrants out towards the lake shore, kind of over the west spit, east spit. So sometimes from the platform, we're not getting the birds overhead. They're pushed off to our right. So keep that in mind as well. And also, the first broad-winged hawks of the season should be showing up any day now. I know there's been a couple seen relatively close. I know the Derby Hill Hawk Watch had a few today. So we'll keep an eye out for broadwings as we go through the next few days. But overall, I'm thinking tomorrow should be a pretty good day. Still a lot of turkey vultures moving, so should get a big push of turkey vultures, and numbers of other things are really starting to hit their peak migration as well as we come into mid-April. So hope to see you out there tomorrow. For Wednesday, we're looking at a few clouds early, then mostly sunny, high around 65, winds west at 10 to 20, So again, it's looking like another good day. And for Thursday, very similar, mainly sunny, high 67, winds west-southwest at 10 to 20 miles per hour. So again, expect good migration on Thursday. All right, migration really feels like it's starting to pick up as we hit this mid-season period. And next 3 days are looking good. How often does that happen? 3 good days in a row? We'll hope that the forecast holds, and I hope to see you out soon at the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. From Lyco Birds, this is David Brown. Thanks for watching.